Linux has one problem Windows never managed to create: too much choice. Ask which Linux version you should install, and 5 minutes later somebody is explaining package managers, rolling releases, desktop environments, and why their personal favorite is obviously the only correct answer. So I narrowed this to 15 major desktop distros people actually choose and ranked them for a normal home user. Someone who wants to browse, work, watch things, maybe play games, and preferably not earn a system administrator certificate along the way. This is not a ranking of which distro is the cleverest. If it were, our last place distro would probably demand a recount in a configuration file. Number 15, NixOS. NixOS may be the smartest operating system I would hesitate to recommend to almost anybody watching this video. Its big idea is brilliant. Instead of changing your computer one setting at a time and hoping you remember what you did, you describe the system in configuration files. If an update goes wrong, you can roll back. If you buy another computer, you can reproduce much of the same setup. For developers and people managing several machines, that can feel like magic. Then a normal user asks, "How do I install this thing?" And suddenly we are discussing the Nix language. The problem is not simply that NixOS is difficult. It adds its own way of doing things on top of learning Linux itself. Even experienced Linux users can hit a problem, find a perfectly good Ubuntu or Arch solution, and discover that it does not apply directly because NixOS wants the fix expressed declaratively. Users love the reproducibility for exactly the same reason newcomers struggle with it. NixOS is fantastic if configuring the computer is part of the hobby. If the computer is supposed to help you do another hobby, start somewhere else. Number 14, Arch Linux. Arch gets called unstable so often that you might imagine it randomly explodes on Tuesdays. That is not really fair. Plenty of people run Arch for years, so the real issue is responsibility. Arch gives you a small base system, very current software, the excellent Pacman package manager, probably the best Linux wiki on the internet, and access to the AUR, a gigantic community collection of package building scripts. It also assumes you understand what you are doing. Even the official installation guide walks through networking, partitions, file systems, bootloaders, and system configuration instead of hiding them behind a friendly wizard. That is why Arch users become so knowledgeable. The operating system keeps giving them homework. The AUR is both one of Arch's best features and one of the places where a careless user can create trouble. Those packages are community maintained, not the same thing as official Arch packages. Arch is excellent for someone who wants control and enjoys learning how the machine works. For a first-time Linux user who just wants Spotify and a printer, this is a very educational way to ruin a Saturday. Number 13, EndeavourOS. EndeavourOS answers the obvious Arch question: what if Arch had a normal installer and it works? You get a graphical installation, sensible desktop choices, good community support, and a system that stays very close to Arch. That makes EndeavourOS one of the nicest ways to enter the Arch world. But notice what it does not promise. The project openly calls itself terminal-centric and deliberately does not include a traditional graphical package manager by default. Once installation is over, you are still maintaining an Arch-style rolling system. Pacman, the AUR, terminal commands, and the occasional update that expects you to read what changed are still part of the deal. So EndeavourOS removes the first difficult hour of Arch. It does not remove Arch. I would recommend it to a curious Windows user who actually wants to learn Linux. I would not install it on my aunt's laptop and disappear for 6 months. Number 12, Manjaro. Manjaro tries to make the Arch world friendlier. You get a graphical installer, graphical software tools, easy kernel management, driver tools, and updates that are held back for extra testing instead of arriving immediately from Arch. That sounds perfect. The awkward part is that the Arch user repository is built around Arch's current packages, while Manjaro's stable deliberately runs behind them. Manjaro's own support community repeatedly warns that AUR packages are unsupported and can run into dependency problems on the stable branch. In other words, one of the biggest reasons people want an Arch-based distro is also one of the parts Manjaro users need to treat carefully. For somebody who stays mostly inside Manjaro's official repositories, it can be a comfortable rolling system. But once you start following Arch tutorials and pulling in lots of AUR software, you are mixing two update schedules and hoping they remain friends. Manjaro is easier than Arch on day 1. I am less convinced that it is simpler after day 100. Number 11. Debian. Debian has possibly the most misunderstood complement in Linux. Stable. Stable does not mean your Wi-Fi can never fail or your desktop will never crash. It means the software base changes very cautiously. Debian releases a tested collection of packages, then spends years fixing security problems and serious bugs without constantly replacing everything underneath you. For a server, that is wonderful. For a desktop, it can feel either peaceful or slightly fossilized, depending on what you need. Debian 13 has a 5-year support lifecycle, and modern Flatpak apps help solve the old problem of desktop applications getting stale. Hardware firmware is also easier to obtain than it was years ago. The downside is that Debian usually expects you to know what desktop you want and how much newer software you actually need. It gives you excellent foundations, then lets distributions such as Ubuntu and Mint add the cushions. Debian is the person at the party who has owned the same reliable Toyota for 15 years and cannot understand why everybody else keeps financing new cars. Number 10. openSUSE Tumbleweed. Tumbleweed is what happens when someone says, "I want a rolling release, but I would also like an undo button." Software moves constantly, but updates are automatically tested before becoming tumbleweed snapshots. The default BTRFs and snapper setup can create file system snapshots, so if an update genuinely causes trouble, you can boot an earlier system state and roll back. That is a very grown-up answer to rolling release risk. The catch is that Tumbleweed is still rolling. Updates arrive frequently. openSUSE has its own tools, terminology, repositories, and way of doing things. And there is simply less beginner-focused help online than you will find for Ubuntu or Mint. Even openSUSE's own documentation points conservative users toward its slower-moving Leap release. For experienced users, Tumbleweed may deserve to be higher than number 10. For a person coming from Windows who has never heard the word snapshot outside photography, there are easier first weeks. Number 9. EndeavourOS. EndeavourOS appears to have done something rare in Linux. Put a designer in the room and actually listen to them. The Pantheon desktop is clean, consistent, and intentionally simple. Its App Center focuses on curated apps and uses a pay-what-you-want model, including $0 when the developer allows it. Third-party Flatpak apps can also be installed when App Center does not have what you need. The downside is the same strong opinion that makes Elementary attractive. It does not always want to be customized the way other Linux desktops do. If you enjoy moving every panel, replacing every component, and turning the desktop into something that looks like the control room of a submarine, Elementary will eventually ask why you are doing this to its furniture. Its curated app selection is also smaller than the giant stores people are used to, so mainstream apps often come from outside App Center. I like Elementary for someone who values calm design over endless options. Linux power users may feel like they have been politely asked to keep their hands where the designer can see them. Number 8. MX Linux. MX Linux looks less like a luxury showroom and more like the garage where the mechanic actually knows what every tool does. It is based on Debian, commonly paired with the lightweight XFCE desktop, and comes with a large collection of MX tools for snapshots, boot repair, drivers, package installation, system information, and other jobs that normally send Linux users hunting through forum posts. That makes it especially good on older computers. There are also advanced hardware support images for newer machines because lightweight does not mean only for the laptop under your bed. The trade-off is appearance and freshness. MX can look old-fashioned beside Zorin, Fedora, or modern KDE, and the Debian base prioritizes proven packages over the newest toys. If your computer is 6 or 10 years old, I would move MX several places higher. If you just bought a new gaming desktop with hardware released last Thursday, this probably is not where I would start. Number 7. Kashi OS. Kashi OS is the distro for people who read the phrase performance optimized and immediately sit slightly closer to the screen. It is Arch-based but easier to install with custom kernels, CPU-specific optimizations, gaming packages, and convenient bundles for Steam, Heroic, Lutris, GameScope, Mango HUD, and other gaming tools. It is one of the hottest desktop Linux choices right now, especially among gamers. What I like most is that Kashi OS itself tells users not to expect magic. Its own gaming documentation says double-digit FPS improvements are not guaranteed, and that software tuning is not a free hardware upgrade. That honesty matters. In ordinary desktop use, the difference may be subtle. And because this is still an Arch-based rolling system, very new software comes with the same expectation that you can troubleshoot when something weird happens. Kashi OS can make Linux gaming easier. It cannot make your unsupported headset, anti-cheat game, or strange motherboard suddenly stop being a Linux problem. Number 6. Bazite. Bazite takes almost the opposite approach to Arch. Instead of handing you the system and saying, "good luck," it tries to make the operating system behave like an appliance. It is built on Fedora's Atomic technology. Core system files are protected, desktop updates happen automatically, and if a new system image causes trouble, you can roll back to the previous deployment. Steam and gaming tools are front and center, which is why Bazite feels especially natural on gaming PCs, handhelds, and living room machines. For the right person, that is fantastic. You are much less likely to destroy the operating system while following a random tutorial at midnight. But there is a weird catch. Because Bazite protects the base system, normal Linux instructions do not always apply. The project prefers Flatpak for desktop apps, Homebrew for command line tools, and containers for many other packages. Traditional system package layering exists, but the documentation tells users to avoid it when possible because it can complicate future upgrades. So Bazite is easier when you accept Bazite's rules. Power users who keep trying to treat it like ordinary Fedora may discover that the safety rails are also rails. Number 5. Pop_OS. Pop_OS is fascinating in 2026 because System 76 did not merely customize somebody else's desktop. It built a new one. Cosmic gives you fast searching, workspaces, window snapping, automatic tiling, a new app store, and unusually thoughtful support for people who like keyboard-driven workflows. Pop also has years of experience with NVIDIA laptops and hybrid graphics because System 76 actually sells Linux computers. The refresh install feature can even reinstall the operating system while preserving personal files and some user data. Here is the honest part. Cosmic is still young. The first production release only arrived at the end of 2025, and current users are still reporting rough edges around gaming, input behavior, sleep, themes, and some of the new Cosmic apps. System 76 is shipping fixes quickly, but this is fresh paint. If I were building a gaming-only machine today, I might choose Bazite over Pop. For a general desktop, I still put Pop slightly higher because it remains a more traditional Linux system underneath and has a very interesting desktop direction. Just understand that you are arriving near the beginning of that story, not after 10 years of polishing. Number 4. Fedora. Fedora is where I send people once they say, "I understand Linux now, can I have newer Linux?" Fedora Workstation stays close to the latest GNOME desktop, ships modern kernels quickly, supports new hardware well, and avoids piling a huge layer of custom changes on top. Fedora 44 already includes GNOME 50, while slower distributions are still working toward many of the same technologies. That freshness has a price. Fedora supports each release for a relatively short period, so major upgrades are part of life. Proprietary codecs, some NVIDIA setups, and certain third-party software can also require extra repositories. Fedora users in 2026 have run into exactly the sort of problem this can create, with RPM Fusion codec or NVIDIA packages briefly conflicting around major release updates. Fedora is not difficult in daily use. The friction appears around the edges, especially where legal or licensing rules prevent Fedora from shipping something ordinary users expect. Once set up, though, it gives you a remarkably clean version of modern desktop Linux without making the computer itself your weekend project. Number 3. Ubuntu. Ubuntu has a strange position in Linux. Enthusiasts complain about it constantly, and then half the troubleshooting instructions on the internet begin with, "On Ubuntu, do this." That support ecosystem is a feature. Ubuntu LTS releases get 5 years of standard security and maintenance updates. Hardware companies test against it. Commercial software vendors often provide an Ubuntu package first. Search for a Linux problem involving a printer, VPN, graphics driver, accounting app, or weird laptop, and there is a good chance somebody has already solved it on Ubuntu. Ubuntu 26.04 is also a modern desktop with GNOME 50, improved scaling, better NVIDIA behavior, stronger dual boot support, and newer gaming work. The complaints are real. Canonical pushes snap heavily. Ubuntu has grown fairly heavy, with 6 GB of RAM now recommended for a comfortable desktop experience. Some users dislike telemetry features even though controls are provided, and Canonical occasionally makes a desktop decision that the community spends the next 2 years arguing about. Ubuntu is not number 3 because it makes perfect choices. It is number 3 because when Linux stops being simple, being the distro everybody knows has enormous value. Number 2. Zorin OS. Zorin understands something many Linux projects forget. Switching operating systems is not a personality test. A Windows user already knows where they expect the menu, taskbar, system tray, files, and settings to be. Zorin gives them a familiar desktop instead of insisting they learn an entirely new philosophy before checking email. The software store supports several Linux package formats. Zorin can recognize Windows EXE and MSI installers and guide users toward Windows app support, or a native Linux alternative rather than simply leaving them with a file that does nothing. It is based on Ubuntu LTS, so most Ubuntu documentation and software also applies. There are catches. Some of Zorin's extra desktop layouts are part of the paid Pro edition. Its Ubuntu base means system components can be less current than Fedora or Arch. And Windows app support is still wine underneath. It does not magically make Adobe, Microsoft Office desktop apps, or every Windows game behave perfectly. But for the person saying, "I want to leave Windows and I do not want my first week to feel like moving to another planet," Zorin is exceptionally good. Number 1. Linux Mint. Linux Mint wins for a reason that sounds almost insulting. It is boring. And I mean that as a compliment. Cinnamon gives Windows users a familiar menu: taskbar, system tray, file manager, and normal window behavior. Mint adds graphical tools for updates, drivers, software, system snapshots, USB images, and other jobs newcomers would otherwise be told to solve in a terminal. Its update manager openly acknowledges that updates can cause regressions and encourages time-shift snapshots so the system can be restored if something goes wrong. That tells you a lot about Mint's priorities. It is not pretending Linux never breaks. It is trying to make recovery understandable when it does. The Ubuntu base gives it huge software compatibility, while Mint avoids some Ubuntu choices its developers dislike, including Snap being enabled by default. Current Mint releases receive 5 years of support. The project has even slowed its development cycle in 2026, and introduced newer hardware images rather than rushing another release simply to keep a calendar happy. There are weaknesses. Cinnamon does not always get the newest display technology as quickly as Fedora. Native packages can be older. Very new hardware may need a newer hardware support image. And if what excites you about Linux is running the newest kernel 20 minutes after it appears, Mint will seem conservative. But that is exactly why it takes first place for a normal desktop user. Linux Mint does not need you to become a Linux person. It is perfectly happy if you forget which operating system you installed and get back to using the computer. That is my ranking. If you already use Linux, I am sure at least one placement has personally offended you. So put your number 1 in the comments and tell me what I got wrong. And if you're thinking about switching from Windows, subscribe. We are going to keep covering Linux for people who want useful computers, not another full-time hobby.